Hey guys, it's me, Sheila, here with story time again. Now, when I told my last story about when I was at Brockport and how my roommate left, and I read the letter that she had written her mother. Well, at the end of that video, I said, listen, if you guys want me to tell more stories, let me know because I have so many stories I could tell. And someone got into my inbox, someone I know, and they say, yes, I would love to hear more of your stories. I like hearing you tell your stories. And I said, okay. And they said, well, can you tell a story about that guy with the Bennett jacket on? You said you guys had become tight that semester. Can you tell that story? So I said, okay, yeah, I'll tell this story. So that's why I'm here right now about to tell that story. Now, it's a little longer, but it's very interesting. And you're going to be probably shocked and surprised at some of the things I'm going to say. Now, two other things. I was 21 when I began going to Brockport. I have the story in a book. I've written 2 books. And I went back to read the story. I should have read the story before I made the video to update myself on what happened back there. I remember most of it, but just to make sure I was accurate about everything. But anyway, I realized I was 21, not 20, when I went to Brockport. Most kids after high school, when they go to college, if they stay to 4 years, they are graduating at 21. I started at 21, but they say it's never too late to start, right? So anyway, and also I want to say, this was years ago. Again, I was 21, way before I met my husband, way before I met Kiko, okay? So I just wanted to clear that up. So I'm going to be talking about that time. All right, so the guy, I noticed, the guy with the Bennett jacket on. One other thing I got to clarify too before I go on with my story so it can make sense. I said when first day of class, the professor told everyone to get up one by one and state their name, where they were from, and why they were there, what they wanted to do. Well, that's true, but he didn't ask us to say where we were from. I saw that in the book too. He just asked us to introduce ourselves, say our names, and what we were there taking up. Okay, so now I got to give him a name. I'm not going to say his real name because I don't know if he would appreciate me telling this story or not. And you'll see why later on in the story. Like I said, well, I'm going to call him by the first initial of his first name, which is D. His name begins with a D, so I'll call him D. Oh, no, I can't call him that. Because listen, he went to Bennett, and the first initial of his first name is D. You guys would swear I'm talking about Bishop. And that is not the case, okay? It's just a coincidence, all right? Bishop is my friend and my pastor, but this is someone else whose name begins with D, so I can't call him that. So how about I call him the first initial of his first name and the first initial of his last name, which is M. So I'll call him DM. DM. That's not going to work either. That sounds too much like BM. All right, so I got to give him a name. Derek. Okay? That's not his real name, but I'm going to call him Derek for the sake of this story. Okay? All right, so during class, I would see Derek looking at me, and I would look right back at him because he was a nice-looking, chocolate, handsome brother, So one day after class, we had been in class for about a month. He had caught up with me and formally introduced himself, and I told him my name again and all that stuff. And I said, so you're from Buffalo too, huh? And he goes, how did you know that? And I said, I saw your Bennett jacket when you were registering. And he's like, oh, okay, yeah. So he said, well, you mind if I come and visit you sometime? And I said, sure. So we exchanged numbers and stuff and dormitories and all that stuff. And he began visiting me. And we became very tight. We became very close. We hung out all the time. Okay. There was a Valentine dance coming up in February because we started school in January. And the next month there was a dance coming up and he took me to the dance. We danced all night. When we got tired of eating campus food, we would go off campus to eat. We just hung out and got along very, very well. And we took a liking to one another. Okay. So one day he came to my room, and again, I had a private room, remember, because my roommate moved out. So he came to my room and we were listening to music and just talking. So he asked me something that no one has ever asked me before. Well, I was only 21, but he said, can I ask you something? And I said, okay. And he said, how would you feel about you and I becoming intimate friends? And I'm like, intimate friends as, you mean sexual? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, he said, but without a commitment though, just like friends with benefits, and I was like, oh, I don't know about that. Being intimate with someone I'm not in a relationship with, And he said, yeah. And I said, well, listen, if you just want to have sex, just say it. He said, no, I just want to be there for you and you can be there for me. We don't know anyone else here and, we're getting along so good and stuff. So I'm like, I don't know. He said, well, think about it and let me know. Okay. So other than class, I didn't see him for about 4 or 5 days. So during that time, I really gave it some thought because, I was sheltered and I'm like, well, he does look good. He was a chocolate, handsome brother. And he looked good. And I said, okay, well, my shelter behind, I'm going to try it. Okay, I wasn't with anyone, and I did like him. He liked me. We got along. So I saw him in the student union one day, and he came over to the table and sat with me, and we, chatted for a little bit. And then he said, have you thought about what I asked you? And I said, yes, I'm going to do it. Let's do it. Let's give it a try. Okay. And, so we laid down the rules, we said it's just intimate friends. There's no commitment. However, we won't see anybody else. Okay. And the rule is if you meet someone, he told me, just break it off with me. And if I meet someone, I'll break it off with you. Okay. There's not going to be none of that. I'm seeing you, but because we're not together, I can see. No. It's just me and you, intimate friends. So that was the rule. And I said, okay, let's do that. So we became very, very close and intimate. And I had only been with one guy sexually before him. And that was pretty much just sex. But it wasn't like that with Daryl. Oh my goodness. He made love to me. And I don't have to describe it. That says enough right there. Okay. So that semester went on and we became more and more close with our intimacy. Okay. So we were getting along so well. I asked him, I said, listen, I said, why don't you and I just hook up? It seems like we're together anyway. Why don't we just become girlfriend and boyfriend? But he didn't want that. And I said, why? Why? And he said, because in my senior year in high school, um, someone broke up with me and I got hurt really, really bad. So I'm not ready to commit to anyone again. But I am human. I have feelings. You have feelings. So that's why I'm just asking for an intimate relationship. So I said, okay. And I let it be. And then as we continued to see each other throughout that semester, I asked him 2 more times at different times. Look, everyone thinks we're together. Everyone around campus thought we were a couple because we were always together. And I said, why don't we just make it official and hook up? I asked him that 2 more times, but he did not want a commitment. So I just let it go and I didn't bring it up again. Okay, so now spring break, the summer was coming, and we both went back home to Buffalo. So I'm thinking, well, it's summer now. Our little fling will be over. I probably won't see him anymore. Not, during the summer. But I was wrong. He continued to come over. I lived with my grandmother. Now, we were never intimate there. Oh, please, that couldn't happen. But he would come to visit me there. We would sit on the porch and all, and we would go to the movies. Our little intimate relationship wasn't just intimate. We would do other things and hang out, and we got closer and closer, and our little intimacy continued throughout the summer. And that third time I asked him about us hooking up officially, and he said no. I'm like, okay. So, and I would always spend time with my god sister and go over to her house. Now, she was dating this guy who had a cousin, and I guess he told the cousin, look, she has a god sister and she's kind of cute. Why don't you come over so you can meet her? That's what he told his cousin. So they hooked it up. I didn't know anything about it. He knew about it. My god sister's boyfriend knew about it. And I believe she knew about it. And he came over. Now let's call him Ron. Okay? But I wasn't feeling Ron. I had feelings for Derek. I really, really like Derek. But as he continued to come over to my god sister's house and visit me, he was kind of quirky, but he made me laugh. And, then he asked me out. And we went out a couple of times, like, again, to the movies and all that stuff. And then he asked me to be his lady. So, long story short, I said, yeah, okay, I will. Because we had started hanging out. And I hadn't seen Derek for a while because I started hanging out with Ron. And I guess Derek was trying to get in touch with me. He was coming over to my grandmother's looking for me. He was calling the house. Now, this is back then, there were no cell phones, okay? We still had landline house phones. So my grandmother told me he was calling a lot, and I just didn't see him that much anymore because I was hanging out now with Ron, okay? And finally, he had called one day, and I answered the phone. And it was him. And he was like, where have you been? And all this stuff. And I said, I've been hanging out with my god sister. And I said, you know what? I need to talk to you about something. And he goes, you met someone, haven't you? And I said, look, can you just come over? I don't want to talk about this over the phone. So he did. He came over. And before I can say anything, he gave me this ring. Beautiful ring. It wasn't an engagement ring or nothing. It was just a ring. He said, I want you to have this. And I think it was a ring his mother had or something like that. But it was a beautiful ring. And he told me he wanted me to have it. So I started wearing the ring, And it was so hard for me to begin to tell him that I met someone. And I didn't think it would be hard because that was our rule. If you meet someone, tell the other person so we can break off what we have. And he didn't want a commitment. So I'm thinking, I'm just going to tell him. But it was so hard for me to tell him. And he was like, well, what did you want to talk to me about? And I went to open my mouth and nothing came out. And then I tried again and I was like, well, and when he saw that I was having difficulty, he said it. He said, you met someone, didn't you? I said, yeah, I did. And he said, I knew it. I knew it. That's why you haven't been available. And I said, well, he asked me to be his lady. And Derek said, and? I said, and I told him yes. He didn't take it very well at all. And he was like, are you loving him? And I was like, no, we just got together. I just told him, we just got together as girlfriend and boyfriend. I told him I would be his lady, but no. And then he was like, look, I really care for you. I don't want to lose you. I go, damn, if a commitment, you're going to let a commitment, not having a commitment come between us? I really care for you. And if a commitment is what you want, okay, well then damn it, we're committed, okay? And I was like, you're just saying that because I'm with Ron now. You don't want a commitment. You didn't want a commitment, And he was like, look, I care for you. I don't want to lose you. And I said, well, I already told him that I would be his girl. Miss, I always have to do the right thing. Me, that's me. I always had to do the right thing ever since I was younger, because I have a conscience and I fear the Lord. So I always tried to do the right thing. So because I already told Ron, yes, I would be his girl, and Derek didn't want a commitment, I broke it off, and he had to accept that. Okay, so summer was over, the fall semester started. I went back to Brockport, and so did Derek. And Ron had been coming to the campus to see me, because we were together. And I had a roommate this time, one of my friends. And anyway, I guess Derek had been coming to the room to see me, but I wasn't there. But one day, he knocked on the door. It was a suite we had, a suite. There was a bathroom, a suite, a common area, and there was a dorm room on this side and a dorm room on the left side. So someone knocked at the door. My roommate answered the door, and he sat in the suite. And she says, Sheila, it's Derek. He's here to see you. Now, Ron was still in Buffalo at this time, So she left the room, I guess, so we can have our privacy to talk. And, well, let me say one thing before I move on. When I started dating Ron, he asked me, where'd the ring come from? Because I didn't have it on when I first started seeing him. And I said, well, a dear friend gave it to me. And he knew it was Derek. And he said, well, I would appreciate if you give it back to him because you're with me now. Now, right then and there, that should have told me that he was controlling. Because remember the story I told you guys about, you are a punk. That's what... Ron is the second guy that put his hands on me. Remember the first guy that ever hit me? I told you 5-6 months I was out of there. I'm like, oh no, And then when I started dating Ron, we were together for 4 years. The first year was good because he was coming up to the campus and stuff. He lived with his mother, so that was new for him. And the second year, I had my apartment and stuff. He was coming. So the first 2 years were good. But the third and fourth year of our relationship is when Ron started beating me up. That's who Ron is. Okay. So going back, when he said, well, I would appreciate it if you give him his ring back because you're with me now. That should have told me right then and there. That should have been a red flag that he's controlling. But no, Miss, I got to do the right thing. And then I said I would give the ring back to Derek, like a dummy. So when my roommate told me that Derek's in his suite and he wants to talk to you, she left, like I said, to give us privacy. So I invited him into the room, and we sat on the bed to talk. And he was pleading with me not to leave him. And I was like, listen, he was like, look, I really, really do care for you. And I can tell that he did. And I really care for him. In fact, I care for him more than I did Ron. But Ron wanted a relationship, a commitment, and Derek did not. So that's why I just chose Ron, to stay with Ron. But Derek was saying, I don't want to lose you. What we get along so well. What we have is good. Please don't do this. Please just, you know. And I said, well, I already started. He said, yeah, but you're not sleeping with him yet. You said you're not. All you got to do is tell him, you know, that you're not going to be with him. Yeah, just started hooking up. But I wouldn't do it. Okay. And I can tell it really hurt him because he had a tear come out of his eyes. And I felt so bad because he didn't want a commitment because he was hurt years ago in high school, last year of high school. And here I was hurting him, you know. I didn't do it on purpose. I was just doing what I promised to do. And I don't know. It just broke my heart to see him that way. With the tears and pleading with me not to get with this other guy. So because of that, I hugged him. And he took advantage of that hug, hugged me back tight, and wouldn't let me go. And then he started kissing me. And he smelled so good. And I really would have rather been with him. But I thought he was just saying he would give me a commitment now just because I was with the other guy. And I didn't want it like that. To just say it because, you know, I didn't want it to be like that. But as he started kissing me, like I said, he smelled good. I really, 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 really liked him, even more than Ron. So I'm so dumb. I don't know why. Anyway, one thing was leading to another. And like I said, we were on the bed. And he undressed me. And when he got up to take his clothing off, that's when I said, I can't do it. I can't do this. I can't do it. And he was like, what do you do? I said, I can't do this. I can't do it. I would be cheating on him. I can't do it. And he was so upset. He's like, I can't believe you. And then he just stormed into the suite. So I got dressed and I went out to the suite with him. And I was like, why didn't you just give me a commitment when I asked? And I said, and by the way, I have to give you this ring back. Oh my goodness. He lost it. He got really pissed and was like, I can't believe. He just went on a rant. And then he snatched the ring and said, I hate you. And he walked out the door. And then I started crying because I didn't want that. I really wanted to be with him, but my dumb behind, I don't know. I don't know. So anyway, I had to say that part. Like I said, I'm getting to another part that'll probably shock you. So that was the second semester. And there was a concert in one of the auditoriums there. And Kashif, I don't know if you remember Kashif. He was the entertainment at the time. And so Ron and I was in the auditorium for the concert. And then walks in Derek with a couple of his friends. And as he walked past us, he eyeballed the guy. And he said to me, your friend has a problem. I think your friend has a problem. But I didn't say anything, and we went on with the concert. So anyway, after that second semester, I took a break. And I said, I'm going to take a break and I'll go back. You should never say that, okay? Because you never go back. And I didn't. I got an apartment, my own apartment. And I didn't really see Derek anymore. All right, so like I said, the first 2 years when I was with Ron was okay. The last 2 years, he grew horns and changed his name to Lucifer. He got comfortable and he began hitting me and beating me up. So I had moved to another apartment and foolishly, I added his name to the lease, He wasn't working or anything to make him feel like a man. This is Ron I'm talking about. And he beat me up for 2 years. Okay. And he had met someone and started cheating on me. And I was kind of glad because I wanted to leave him before, but he would threaten me and scare me into not leaving him because he lived with his mother. And she said he couldn't come back, so he wouldn't have had a place to go. So when he met this woman and started seeing her, I was glad because it made it easier for me to move out of my own apartment to get away from him. Okay, I have to say that the story is not about him, but I have to say that so things can make sense. And then I realized I made the wrong choice. I made the wrong choice. I should have stayed with Derek. I had my reasons at the time, and I just told you guys why I didn't. But I had more feelings for him at the time. And he was better. He treated me better. He loved me intimately better. I came to find that out. And I realized I made the wrong choice. So I wasn't with Ron anymore. Thank God for that. I was by myself. I wasn't with anyone. But I missed Derek. And I wanted him back in my life. So I was looking for him. I made calls. I asked questions. Was he still here? And I couldn't find him. Okay. So I was just by myself in my apartment that I got after I broke up with Ron. So one day I was going to the lobby of the apartment to check my mail, and I had to stop into the office to give him some paperwork or something like that. And excuse me, after I came out of the office, guess who was coming into the door? Derek. And it had been 5 years since I've seen him. 5 years since Brockport, since he told me he hated me. And I hadn't seen him again since then for 5 years. And he walks into the door, but a woman was with him. So I didn't know who she was to him or whatever, but I looked at him and I said, hi. And he spoke, hello, and then he kept it moving. They got on the elevator. So now I'm wondering, I wonder if he lives here. And is that his girlfriend? So now I'm shocked, first of all, because I hadn't seen him in 5 years. And I had been looking for him because I missed him and I wanted him back. I didn't know. So anyway, I got my mail and I went back up to my apartment. And then when I got back upstairs, I said, I forgot to go to the office to do what I had to do. So I got me something to drink and all that, and I went back downstairs to the office to do what I had to do. And when I was coming out of the office, Derek was getting off of the elevator, and he was by himself. So we had small talk. I said, do you live here? And he said, no, my girlfriend does. I was just bringing her back home. He said, do you? I said, yeah, I'm in apartment 202. Come see me sometime. And he said, oh, okay. And he said, all right, I'll see you later. Good seeing you. Now, by him saying that, good seeing you, and cutting it short and leaving, I'm thinking he's not going to come. He's with someone now. The way we left, he told me he hated me. You know, he's not going to come. So I was like, oh, well. But lo and behold, 2 days later, it was about 2 days later, there was a knock on my door, my apartment door. And when I opened it up, you all know who it was. It was Derek. So I invited him in, and we sat on the couch and we talked and caught up with each other, what had been going on in our lives and all that stuff. And again, he told me that was his girlfriend. And he asked me, I don't know if he asked me if I told him I wasn't with anyone. I said, I'm not with anyone, you know. And then he said, well, what happened to that guy you left me for? And I told him it didn't work out. I said, he ended up being very physically abusive to me. And I told him, I said, I made the wrong choice, Derek. I should have stayed with you. And I said, I've been looking for you ever since. And I said, I really do miss you. And I want to get back with you, but you have a girlfriend. So we were on the couch, and before you know it, we were kissing. Okay? And at that time, I'm like, am I going to do the right thing again? Or am I not going to give a damn? And, you know, well, I didn't give a. And the kissing, one thing led to another, and we were intimate. Okay? And I forgot to tell you, every time I saw him, even when we were dating at Brockport, every time I would see him, my heart would go boom, 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 boom. But my heart would be so fast because I just liked him like that so much every time I saw him. When I saw him coming into the apartment building with that girl, my heart just started beating fast. Boom, 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 boom. When he knocked on my door a couple of days later, boom, 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 boom. My heart was just beating and throbbing. Okay? But after we, I feel a sneeze coming on. After we, oh, God bless me. After we got intimate, although we had a girl, I felt like, well, I don't have anyone. I'm not with anyone. So I'm not cheating on anyone. He's cheating on his girl. And I was like, am I wrong? He's being unfaithful. I'm not. You know, this is what I'm telling myself, because now I'm feeling like, oh, dog, you know. But it didn't feel the same. It wasn't the same for some reason. You know? So after that encounter was over, I really never saw him again for a long, 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 long time. And I'm going to get to that part too. So it was 22 years the next time I saw him. 22 years had gone by. All right. Now this time, this was around 2010. And I was married by this time. Kiko and I, we stayed in this townhouse. And I was coming home from work. I was going home. And I was walking down the street. I was walking this way. And there was a guy coming the opposite way. You know. And I'm the type of person, I'll speak to anyone. Like if I'm in a store and I see someone, hi, how you doing? Hello, how you doing? I speak to everyone, you know? So as we were crossing, like I said, we were going opposite directions. I said, hi, how you doing? And he spoke. And then he said, Sheila? So now I'm looking. Now I'm focusing on who is this that's calling my name. And it was Derek. 22 years later. It was around, like I said, 2010. And he was like, oh my God, girl. Where? And I'm like, hey, and how you doing? Blah, 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 blah. A little small talk. And then he said, you live around here? I said, yeah, I live in those townhouses over there. He said, I live right across the street in those high rises. And I said, wow, And he said, well, why don't you come and visit me sometime? And I said, well, I can't. I'm married now. He said, you're married? I said, I'm married. And I said, the only way I would visit you is if my husband came with me. And then we laughed. And then he said, well, that would be okay. I know he didn't mean that. But I said, nah. And I said, there is no way. To myself, I said, there is no way I'm going to bring my husband over to meet an old lover. No. So I never went over there by myself or with Kiko. Never, ever, ever. And that was that. I never saw him again to this day. I don't know if he's still among the living or not. Put it that way. I don't know. And my baby's gone now. And when I saw him, when we were walking down the street, when I saw Derek, there was no more fast heartbeat. No more fast heartbeat. Because my heart was with Kiko then. I mean, I was shocked to see him. He was shocked to see me and stuff. But there was no more heartbeat with Derek. Because I was in love with who God put into my life. My husband, Kiko. And like I said, he's gone now. And I'm by myself. I'm not with anyone. And I really have no desire to be with anyone. I miss my husband very much. I really do. But I'm coping. I'm coping with it. And unless the Lord puts someone in my life, I have no desire to be with anyone. I'm here by myself, and I'm dealing with that. I have my moments, but I'm doing fairly well. So, to the person, I know this was a lengthy story, and to the person that wanted me to do story time again, there you have it. And that's what happened with the guy with the Bennett jacket on. Okay? So, there it is. You guys have a good day.